Hello everyone, welcome to VizConnect, connecting you with the art of data visualization and storytelling. My name is Sagar Kapoor. I'm a part of customer success team at Tableau. It's a pleasure and honor to have Jim and Rajavel on VizConnect today. Jim will talk about 5 building blocks on the journey from spreadsheets to Tableau, and Rajavel will talk about key aspects of dashboard designer skills. So without further ado, over to Jim.
The data structure inside Excel and the data structure inside Tableau are two very different things. When I grew up, we had a calendar that sat on the refrigerator, and I could look at that calendar and I could look across that calendar, and in columns I saw days, and going down I could see weeks. So I got very comfortable looking at what we refer to as a short, wide data set, and that's what Excel presents. Tableau, on the other hand, needs a data set that is narrow and tall, and converting a Excel data set to a Tableau data set is really very easy. Okay. This would be a typical Excel data set, and as you can see, all the individual dates are in a column by themselves. That's not the way that Tableau likes to see data. The data needs to be pivoted. And it's very easy to do. Just highlight all the columns, pivot the data, and now the data is in a format that Tableau can deal with it. All the dates are in a single dimension. It's called pivot field, but we would change the name from pivot fields to date and then change the name to values. Well, once we got the data the way that Tableau likes to see it, the next question we see come up all the time is, how do I add another column into the data set? Typically what you do if you were working in Excel, you do a VLOOKUP. In Tableau, you do that by joining data sets. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first got started, the idea of taking two data sets and putting them together was absolutely intimidating. But actually joining data sets is really a very easy thing to do. Okay. Here, I've added a file containing quantities to the original file that was sales data. Now, to join the two data sets, we know that we want at the customer level, we want to know what quantity goes with what sales value, and we also want to know what date. So we join them on those two different dimensions. And it's very easy we have our original sales data. It's very easy to add now the quantity data to the sales data, and we have both sales and quantity for each customer during each time period. The other thing that comes up quite often, particularly in consumer products, is a month goes by and we get a new set of sales data, and I want to add that sales data to the existing data set. And we do that by using a union that extends the length of the data file. It's similar to an append command in Access. Very easily done. To do that, we just drag the new file until we see this box light up that says drag table here to union, drop it in place, and the new file is appended to the old file, but there are two columns added to your data set. One describes the sheet, the other describes the table that the data came from. And you can use this to separate the data in your worksheet. But once you do that, now we've got the complete set of data, all of the 2019 data and the 2020 data, and we can use it to do our overall analysis. Now, there's one other way of connecting data, and that's through blending. And we see this quite often where people will ask about blending data. That's most often done when you're combining data from different data sources that are at different levels of aggregation. Now, personally, I try to avoid blending because the data is always aggregated at the level of the link. My first choice is to join or union data, and I'll go to blending data only when there's no other choice. The other thing you have to understand is it limits your functionality inside Tableau. I've got two data sets here. This data set is sales by year, breaks down by quarter and by month. I've got goals by year, and the goals are only at the year level. So these are two data sets. This is where you would blend the two data sets together. There are different levels of aggregation. When you start making a viz, the first file that you add, the first fill that you add to the viz defines the primary data set. The secondary data set is always shown in red, and the data is joined at the link between the two data sets. And here it's joined at the category level. Now this is what I meant about being aggregated at the level of the link. As you can see down here in the furniture category, for example, quarter by quarter, the value is always the same because that's the only value you have in the data set. If you have to use a blend, by all means use a blend, but I would prefer to join data or to union data whenever possible. Okay, so we got past the first thing. We got data into into Tableau. Now our next objective is to go ahead and use it and to make a visual out of it. Now the way Tableau makes a visual is for each one of your worksheets. It's going to create a subset of the data, and that subset of the data is what you use on that actual worksheet. And it starts by first taking dimensions and measure labels as you put them on rows and columns, and it creates, and you can think of it like an Excel spreadsheet with just the rows labeled and the columns labeled, and it creates that spreadsheet look. It doesn't actually look like that. It's the narrow, tall version of the data, but you can think of it like an Excel spreadsheet. Then, after the dimensional table is made, it adds values, and the rest of the order of operation manipulates those values and does some totaling with them. The order of operation to itself is nothing more than the sequence that Tableau goes through. And most people think of it as 10 steps. I like to take those 10 steps and break them into 3 groups. The first group is the first 2. They're data filters and extract filters, and they work at the workbook level. And what they do is they limit the amount of data that's in the overall data set, and it makes your workbook perform a whole lot better. The next 3 steps build that dimensional table, and that's context filters, the creation of sets, fixed LODs and top N, and dimensional filters. That's what creates the structure of your data table. And the last 5 add the values to those data tables. We're going to see how that works as we get down here further into other calculations. The third step I refer to as syntax. When you learned Excel, you had to learn a whole language. The same thing's true in Tableau. You have to learn the language of Tableau. And while a lot of it might look similar, and a lot of the expressions we use might look similar to Excel, they really operate very, very differently. And you learn that language. Now, fortunately, you've got some help. And that help is with what's known, we're going to create a calculated field here. This is the calculation wizard. The calculation wizard is going to help you, and if you're familiar with Excel, it's going to look awfully familiar. It's going to help you when you start writing your own calculations. This drop-down filter is used to group calculations to make them easier to find. Each function appears in the list, and this table over here, much like Excel, tells you how to use the function and what values you can place in the function. Creating a calculation, and I'm going to create a little calculation here for average selling price. We give it a name. We start creating the calculation. Never do a live presentation. By taking the sum of sales divided by the quantity. And you see as we go along, Tableau is going to auto-suggest, it's going to suggest values that you can put in here, sum of quantity. As you enter the formula, Tableau does a syntax check, and it's going to tell you if what you've put in is valid or whether it's not valid. This calculation contains errors, and if I look down here, it's going to tell me what the error is. This is I've mixed aggregates and non-aggregates, and you can't do that in Tableau. This squiggly little red line will tell you where the error is, and if I hover over that line just right, we can change this calculation to include the sum of the quantity, and we can see the calculation at that point becomes valid. The calculation wizard is going to be your best friend when you get started. It's going to help you create the proper syntax and the proper way of writing out your calculations. That's going to take us to the fourth step that I want to talk about, and this is really the backbone of creating your own custom calculations, and that's how you create your own how you add your own character into the visual that you present. Now, Tableau calculations come in 4 different types, and there's 4 basic types, and you really have to spend time and learn these. There's the simple calculations like the one we just did, calculating the ASP. Simple calculations also include the conditional statements. And if you've written some SQL, this form looks familiar. It's the if, this, then, that, else, and sequence. And if you're from the Excel side, it's going to take a little getting used to, but you will get used to it. Date functions. Dates are a very unique and special category of data in Excel. Dates are self-sequencing. They know how to sort, and you can use them in calculations. And date calculations come in a couple of different types, and we're going to use those. I'm going to show you some examples here in just a second. And then my personal favorite are LOD expressions. LOD expressions allow you to create additional layers in your data. They're virtual layers in your data. They're layers that aren't really there. And then table calculations, and if you're coming from Excel, that's going to be the ones that you're comfortable with, because table calculations look and feel a whole lot like what you've been doing on the Excel side. We take a look at a couple simple calculations here. And we've shown you we've shown you a very simple calculation. I want to show you an example of an if statement and how an if statement would look. This is the syntax for an if statement. All this says is if the region, and region is one of our dimensions, if the region is east or the region is west, I want to change it to coastal. If the region is central, I want to call it middle, and if it's anything else, I want to call it south. And that allows me, that calculation is valid, and that allows us to break down this data into coastal data, middle data by region. Those new classifications. Let's take a look at a couple of date calculations, because like I say, dates are very special. Dates do 3 different things. Now, the first date that I want to talk about is date trunk. Date trunk, and let's just open this up so you can see all the date options that you've got. Date trunk is right here, and what date trunk does is date trunk is going to return the first day of the date part of the date that's in the formula here. So for January, the 1st of January, for May, the 1st of May, 1st of June, this could be year, it would return 2018, 2019, or or it could be quarter. It would be Q1 or Q2. It's going to return, and it's going to return the first day of the month. So it's going to return January 1st. It's going to April 1st, or October 1st for quarters. Date part is a different type of date function. What date part does, it will return the number of the month. So date part month will return the numbers 1 through 12. So we can use this to classify data. We can use it to, if I want to look at the first month or the third month, we can use it to classify data. The other thing that date functions allow you to do is they allow you to do date math. And there's a couple of functions that date add and date difference allow you to do date math. Date difference simply says, I want to know how many days it was between the day we got the order and the day we shipped the order. And date difference will calculate that difference. I can bring it to the Viz, calculate the average, and we can see by month how that varied. LOD expressions, as I said before, LOD expressions are my personal favorite. LOD expressions allow you to drop a different layer into your data set. If you think about the data that you entered in, the lowest level of that data, and if you're looking at sales data, for example, that would be like the line level on an invoice. If you take a look at the lowest level of that data, that forms the bottom of your pyramid. And if you total all that data up and get one value, that's the top value of your pyramid. Well, what an LOD expression allows you to do is create different layers in your data set where you can come back and you can use that value. And that value itself is not an aggregate, and it can be used in any expression. I want to show you an example of I have to move something here. I want to show you an example of an LOD expression, and we talked earlier about filtering and context filters, and I want to talk about context. Okay. This is a very simple LOD. All this LOD does is it says for each type, and there's two types here, there's fruit and there's vegetables. For each type, give me the total of the total cost. And cost here, total cost is nothing but price times quantity. And if I take the total for fruit, it's $5.75. And if I take the total for vegetables, it's $2.63. Now, LODs are calculated in the fifth step or the fourth step of the order of operation. The third step of the order of operation are context filters. What a context filter does is allow you to decide when you want the filter to be applied. Here I have produce name on the filter shelf, and I've placed it in context. So if I filter produce name, the filter for the LOD calculation is made in the fourth step of the order of operation. So the value with produce in the context is now $3.75 for fruit. If on the other hand, produce is not in context, the filter is applied after the LOD is calculated. And even though I filtered bananas out, and you won't see banana in the list here, the total is $5.75. It's a total for all the fruit. We get a lot of questions where people will say, how can I write an equation, or how can I set up a filter so that Tableau will ignore the filter? Well, Tableau doesn't really ignore filters. It doesn't arbitrarily decide what to apply and what not to apply. You decide as a developer to decide when you want the filter applied. If you want the filter applied before LODs or sets or top end are calculated, you place the filter in context. If you don't want it applied, you do not place the filter in context. Okay. I'll take a quick look at table calculations. And like I said, these are fairly, you should be fairly comfortable with these if you're familiar with Excel. because they work on a table. And you can think of that table being rows and columns as you created it in your Viz. Little different terminology in Tableau. We talk about the scope being how much of the table is going to be included in the calculation. And we talk about direction, and that direction is across or down. Okay? Table calculations can be very simple to do. I've just made a table here where it's the same table we've been looking at. It's sales by month. And if I wanted to calculate the running total, I could simply open up the pill, go to quick table calculation, and there's a number of predetermined calculations. We're just going to do a running total here. And I'm going to put sales back on the Viz so that we can see that, in fact, it is totaling. And you can see that you've got the running total, but the running total is going across. And we really want the running total going down. Well, that's very easy to correct. I can open the Viz and I can say compute using direction. This is where direction comes into play. I want to go down the table, and we've changed the direction, so now the calculation is running down. I want to show you one other thing, because ultimately you'll end up writing your own table calculations. And I'm going to pull this off. Okay, if you pull a table calculation off place it in measure, it's going to show up, and they're going to give it a calculation number. And if you open it up, you open up the calculation and look at it, you can see the actual calculation that's been placed in there. All the table calculations are listed here in the calculation wizard. And you can see what calculations are available to you as a table calculation. First through previous value are the equivalent of an index in Excel. They're positional, and they look at the current position of your cell and either move to the left or the right. First is the first value in a column or a row. Last is the last value in a column or row. Index will increment you across the columns or row. Previous value will look up the previous value, and look up allows you to pick any value in the table. The table calculations include running values and include totals. I mentioned before that it's possible to take an LOD and use it in any other type of calculation. I want to show you an example of that, because we often get this question where someone will write in and say, hey, look, I want to be able to look at the rank of my subcategories over a period of time, and I want to see how it changes over time. Well, ranking is a table calculation, and to calculate the total in any period, I wrote an LOD. And in words, it simply says, take all the combinations of segment, subcategory, and year of order date. And for each one of those, for each combination of those three dimensions, take the total sales and save it under this name, and I'm going to use it later. I don't want to use it right now, but I'm going to use it later. Now, ranking is a table calculation, and all this does is it says rank that LOD in a descending fashion, in a descending order. Okay. I can bring those together on a table. Want to open up the edit table calculation so that we can take a look at the scope and the direction. And this box, if you show the calculation assistant, that highlight will show you how the calculation is being applied. I want to make sure that it's at the subcategory level, 1 through 17, and I want it to change every year. I don't want it to carry over year. I want it to change every year. So restart every year. With that, we're able to create the table that you see here, and you can see that in 2016, for consumer products, phones were ranked #1. They had the highest sales for any subcategory during that year. And corporate #1, home office #3. When we get to 2018, they were 3rd for consumer products, they were 4th for corporate, and they were first for home office. So you can take an LOD expression and use it in any other calculation. Okay. Want to move on to the last of the five tools, and that's a toolkit that includes filters, sets, and parameters. And filters, sets, and parameters allow you to limit the amount of data that you're using, and allows the user to make those decisions from the surface of the viz. I want to talk about filters very quickly. 2 types of filters. Dimensional filters apply to the 5th step of the order of operation. They change the structure of the table. Measure filters apply to the values in the table. Dimension filters, you're very familiar with these, you've used them. A dimension filter, very quickly applied. You apply you drag the pill to filters, open up the filter menu, and you can deselect or select any of these categories. And once you make a selection, that data structure is changed. The only values left in this table now are for furniture and for these 4 subcategories. The data structure itself has changed. Measure filters apply to the values in the data set. The data structure will remain the same. We're going to look at the simple table. I've got a couple of product lines, several products and customers, and the product has some colors associated with it. I want to filter based on quantity. Drag quantity to the filter shelf. This window opens up, and this window allows you to do 2 things. First, it allows you to decide whether you want to look at the row level. That's what would happen if you took all values, or you want to do some sort of aggregation and look at the aggregate value. We're going to look at the row value, and I want to look at all values less than 15. And sure enough, it'll filter at the row level so that all the values are less than 15. I could also do that same filter, except apply it at the aggregate level. Okay, apply it at the aggregate level, sum, and once again, value less than 15. And you can see that I'm left with 2 values, 15 and 4. This is at the row level, this is at the aggregate level, and you make that decision as you create the filter. Okay. Filters remove data from the data set. Sets, on the other hand, reclassify data that's in the data set, and it creates 2 groups. It creates the in group and the out group. But all the data is still there and it's available for use. Okay, they're very useful. Here I created a simple set. And I just select binders. I want binders to be the in subcategory, everything else in the out subcategory. Okay, so I've placed the set on color. In is blue, out is gray. You can see what portion of the total sale were in binders versus everything else. And because working with sets, this is entirely sortable. You can see the portion by the filtered value. I want to talk briefly about parameters, and we're going to then pull this whole thing together here. Parameters are really probably the most aligned function in Tableau. They're very useful, but there's some things you have to understand about parameters. Parameters allow users to input data directly into Tableau. Okay, there's only two ways you can do that. You either load it in the data set or you use a parameter. Parameters are single valued. They can only have one value at a time. That value remains constant until it is manually changed by a user. It's the same value throughout the entire workbook, but they don't do anything. They don't do anything until they're used in a calculation or a filter. And it's the calculation or the filter that actually does the work. This is just a simple example of a parameter, set up parameter on the basis of region. There's 4 regions. And then show the parameter, then create a calculation or a filter based on that parameter. And this is just very simple. It just says, if the region equals the region parameter, return a true. If not, return a false. I place it on the filter shelf to true. And now these values are dependent on the value selected in the parameter. Okay. Now these are some pretty simple examples. These 5 tools were the tools that I found really valuable to me in learning Tableau. About the 3rd century BC, Archimedes identified that there were 6 types of what he called basic machines that any other machine could be made from. When I learned it, we called them tools, any tool that you could be made from. Only understanding what's going on in these 5 areas can help you drive any visual or any type of calculation you choose to make. And in fact, this is an example. It's going to take a second to load here. This is an example that does exactly that. LOD calculations are used to calculate the year-to-date and last year-to-date. They're also used to calculate the year-over-year percentages. Set actions are used to define market segments as well as areas. And this, what you see at the top, is actually a parameter date, and it's set to, and you can see the values changing beneath as I hover over the start date. So we go year-to-date August, year-to-date July. Okay. The value picker here allows me to pick states. And all this is a combination of those tools shown so far. I thank you for your time. What you've seen today, I'm going to put up on my blog later today, or at the very latest on over the weekend. And I'll also have the workbooks posted on my site, on my profile site. Thank you very much.
So today I'm going to highlight about the dashboard designer skills. So I, from my experience, I've listed down like 14 key things that you need to keep in mind as a dashboard designer. So the number one, I would say, like, you need to know your goal. Like when you're designing a dashboard, you need to know like what is the goal that you're trying to achieve in your dashboard. Are you trying to address a particular problem that a business is struggling, like profit and loss, or revenue management, or a patient volume in a hospital, or the customer purchase in a retail area? So that goal you need to identify when you're designing a dashboard. So that should be your primary thing when you start a dashboard design. So I'm going to share in the whole presentation like how I used InViz as a comparison for these parameters. So in InViz, I took up the goal as organ donation theme. So I got impressed. I mean, I got by watching this series, I got to know like what is the pain the organ donor goes through the journey of getting an organ from a donor. So that I understood as a goal, and then I kept that as my primary point. So the number two is like you need to know your KPI of focus. What are your key performance indicators? Like what are your metrics that you're going to have them in your dashboard? Take for example, if you're looking at revenue management dashboard, you need to have revenue, you need to have variance comparisons with year over year. So you need to identify or you need to jot down the list of key performance indicators that are essential for your dashboard designing. So here in iInvest, like I have jotted down what would be my key performance indicator. Like I need to identify the waiting list statistics by ethnicity, by organ. I need to identify the transplantation statistics. I need to identify the donation statistics. All these are key performance indicators I would like to show in my dashboard, which is very important. Which is aligned to the goal that I have taken for iInvest. So that's one example, classic example I can highlight here uh, to identify the key performance indicators. So this will help, like when you start interacting with your business users who is going to use the dashboard, you will get to know like what are their pain areas and what are the key metrics that they're interested to see in the dashboard. Third thing I would say, like you need to know your audience. Like you need to check with business users who are the audience of your dashboards. Is it going to be like a whole set of 1,000 users who are in the field? For example, retail store manager is going to use, or if you're going to a hospital, is it going to be a physician, or is it going to be a patient? Or if you're going to banking, is it going to be your bank manager, or is it going to be a customer? So you need to know your audience and then what you're trying to address in your dashboard. So that would be the key thing you have to come as a fourth point. And in my iInvest process, I noted down like what are the expectation that my audience is going to see from the iInvest dashboard. So I need to show some worldwide data with respect to organ donation. I need to show the organ donation process because what if a new user who doesn't know what is organ donation means, they need to understand the process involved between a donor, between a receiver, and then how they blend together, and then how it happens finally. So I need to show that process. So you need to get to know that question answered by talking with business, and then know the audience, like who is going to use the dashboard. So simple pen and paper should be fine to identify all these points, and then you can start designing the dashboard. The next key thing, this is my primary thing I would say when a dashboard designer, you need to have a wireframe when you're designing a dashboard. So once you get all the goal, KPI, and then the key audience information, you have to sit down and then you have to come up with a wireframe. So wireframe can be a pencil sketch, or you can use different tools like Adobe XD or Figma or Balsamic, or a lot of tools available. But I am a person who goes with pencil and sketch because that's very quick and then you can do it. So one example I can show from my experience, like I have put together here a pencil wireframe sketch. You have a landing page, and then you have some navigation buttons, and then you click those buttons, it goes to the different dashboard. You have some dashboard with geographic map, you have dashboard with some pie charts, a GAR chart, bar charts, and different grids, and you have some dashboards with user subscriptions and logout page and all those, etc. So a pencil sketch will have a clear focus what you're trying to achieve. So I would say like wireframe is key when you're designing a dashboard. So try to, after you have a conversation with business, come up with the wireframe, then have a further conversation with business and understand whether it's aligning with what they expect in terms of delivering a dashboard. So that's one of the prime thing I would say in terms of dashboard designing. Number 5, I would like to highlight is like less is more. Don't put too much of information in a dashboard. Keep it less cluttered because that will add more visual understanding of what you're trying to convey in a story. If you take this example, it's like it has like 4 KPIs and then 2 pie charts and then a stacked bar chart and then a trend showing like how the conversion is going. So a smaller is fine. Don't put too much of information in a dashboard and make it cluttered. So that's one of the key things you have to keep in mind as a dashboard designer. Next, number 6, I would say like navigation buttons. I know like if you take iInvest, there are tons of long form dashboard. In fact, I built a web dashboard with long form, but I would say like navigation buttons adds a key value in terms of telling your story. Like you can put together like a story, and then you can navigate from your home page to a different page, and then go to a next story, and then go to a next story. So that will add more value in terms of keeping your audience confined, and then first target the key problem, and then go to the next problem, and then drill down, and then you can view the information. So here for my InViz, when I started a long form design, then I thought mobile user is one of the prime person who, because most of the dashboards are nowadays viewed in mobile. So I kept mobile audience should not go through a long form like scrolling and then miss the context. So I had a navigation button in the left, which is quite easy to navigate and then view the data that I'm trying to convey. You have a lot of tools out there like to download these icons, or you can even build your own icons with those tools. But I would recommend using navigation button as one of the key thing in your dashboard designing. Number 7, be creative and innovative. Like I know most of the organization go with bar chart, line chart, and grid. But on top of bar chart, line chart, and grid, what can you add innovative to your storytelling? So here, for example, if you see in my InViz, I have highlighted the patient journey, the donor journey, and then how they merge together in the process. So that's like how you are trying to highlight the process on top of bar chart that you're trying to say. So that adds value of like how the business flow is and then how you're trying to convey the message. So that you have to add some little bit of creativity and innovativity when you're designing a dashboard. And one example here if you see is like I've put a toggle between a web view and then a mobile view button here. I have a button which asks you, which can help you to go and see the YouTube video or your education video where you can convey, like if a user doesn't know about this dashboard, they can click the video and then understand the information and then come back and see the dashboard. So those are some of the key things when you design, you have to keep in mind what creativity you can add and what innovation you can bring it to your dashboard. The next thing I would say is like when you're coming up with visualization on top of data, you need to know what visualization that you can use based on your business case. Because not always all the visualization fit for a single particular problem. So you need to identify if it is a trend, go with line chart. If it is a comparison, you can use a tornado chart like positive negativity you can compare. Or if it is two metric, one attribute, you can go for a heat map which says like color of the rectangle is one metric and then size of the rectangle is another metric, and it's easy to identify the trend within that. Lots of visualizations out there. I would let you guys to explore, but yeah, keep in mind what visualization you choose, which makes sense to your problem that you're trying to address with the data. Number 9, focus on the font and colors because that adds more value. You can't just have multiple fonts in your dashboard and then make it like confusing for the audience to visually see it. So you need to have as a thumb rule, I would say like keep it with 3 colors minimum and then maximum 6 colors. Don't go beyond that. So that because colors has to be consistent across your dashboard, which adds visual appeal to the audience, and then they will be able to easily correlate and understand the data. So there could be a standard that you might follow in your corporate, stick to that, or like I said, keep color blindness also in focus, because statistics says like 8% of men are primarily affected by color blindness than female. So there could be a user who could be color blindness. So you have to keep that factor when you design the dashboard and choose the colors wisely. Number 10, responsive design. I put this point because like 10 years back, dashboard was primarily on the web, but now with mobile, tablet, and a lot of things coming in, I think your dashboard has to be responsive. Customers expect that you design once and it has to render everywhere. Fine. Tableau provides good responsive factor, and even other BI tools also provide. But as a dashboard designer, you need to know like what key things you have to keep in mind when it comes to responsive design. Take for example Tableau, you need to use containers. If you put the things inside a container, it automatically makes it responsive for tab or mobile. So that things you have to keep in mind when you're developing a dashboard. Moving to the next point, this is my favorite part. Not all project you start from scratch. There could be a project where you have to convert from one BI tool to another BI tool. Take, for example, business objects to Tableau, or business objects to MicroStrategy, or MicroStrategy to Power BI. You can't expect apple to apple conversion. There could be a dashboard which was built 10 years back. So you can try to see what value you can bring in with a new tool that you're trying to use. Like take, for example, Tableau. You have to identify the key features that can help business use those features rather than just focusing on apple to apple conversion. So don't always try to go for apple to apple conversion. Try to think outside the boundary and then try to have a conversation with business user, and then come up with features that Tableau offers or any tool that you're going with offers, rather than sticking with what the source tool that you're having to convert. So don't look for apple to apple conversion, I would say. So that's one of the key thing I thought of sharing it. Uh, Next thing is like use selectors, filters in your dashboard, because that adds more value to slice and dice your data and then easily understand the pattern. You don't have to have too much of visualization. It can be easily targeted with selectors, and then you can easily slice and dice the data. So that's one of the key things as a dashboard designer you should keep in mind. The next thing is like info window or the tool tips or annotation. You have to keep in mind because those adds value. So you can see here, like I have put annotation of each of the countries as they go through different year, highlighting what is the value of that particular country and then how the COVID-19 impact those countries with respect to tourism. And in fact, in the tooltip, if you see here, I have a visualization on top of the tooltip, which is like additional interactivity, and also you're trying to reduce the visualization in the whole screen, rather you're popping up for a specific country in the tooltip. So that's the thing you have to keep in mind. Tooltip is also very important. Make sure you give right labeling in the tooltip so the end user understands what they see in the tooltip. Moving to next point, the last point in my thing, ask your data. So this is in the latest versions of any BI tool you take, Tableau, MicroStrategy, Power BI, or ClickView. They have given this feature like you can ask the data, what do you want? Like, what is my top 10 revenue? What is my bottom 10 performing retail stores? So that you can just type the question and then it will create a visualization for you. I would like to play a quick 1-minute video where Tableau has been using this feature. Let me play this.
Hey, Rajavel, I think sadly no one will be able to hear that.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. So key thing what I want to highlight here is like dashboard design is not about designing dashboard. There could be a case where you go talk with business user in terms of helping them create dashboards. So how do you use these latest features for the business user? Like rather than dragging and dropping like multiple dimensions and measures, you can tell them you can use this feature of ask your data. You can type the question and it will list down the visualization that it can generate. So that's a quick way of creating this using this feature. I like the feature, and as a dashboard designer, I feel this you have to keep in mind when you're having a conversation with business user, because nowadays business users creates the dashboard and you try to assess them in terms of creating the dashboard. So this feature adds a lot of value in terms of speeding up the dashboard design in factor. Uh, with further thing, I'll just quickly show me my IronViz with all these points that I shared, how I have put together in my IronViz and then build this dashboard. I'll just highlight like a couple of points which I have showed in the presentation. Uh, give it a second, it's loading the dashboard. Okay, so like I said, color. So if you see my whole IronViz dashboard, I've used consistent colors, and then like I'm trying to answer like what is the problem that I'm trying to address here, and who are the audience, and then what is the complexity involved with organ donation, and then I'm trying to show some innovation or creativity, like one donor can save 8 lives, and then I'm trying to show the journey of organ donation, like how patient goes through and then how donor goes through in the process, and how they merge, and then how they finally succeed with organ transplantation. So if you see here, I've put a process infographic image, and then on top of that, I have put a tooltip which says like what each process means, which clearly identifies, and then I show a graph which gives the statistics of organ donation. So this is where you, like I said, you have to be creative, innovative, how to do that. And if you also come down each of the section, if you see, I would have given some facts related to organ donation. So those things also you should keep in mind when you design. And also, like if you see, scroll down, I've used a donut chart instead of a regular pie chart, which also creates easy understanding of how the slice of the data factor is, like how much living organ donation and then how much deceased organ donors are, and like an infographic image which says donations to information, waiting list information, and transplantation information. And also, like if you scroll through down, I have a time visualization. It's exactly not time visualization. I have put an image and then I have mouse over. I have given the information of each year, who are the doctors who have successfully made a milestone with organ transplantation. But yeah, there are tons of articles where you can achieve this in Tableau as well. And there is a geographic data, which region has more organ donation in US, and there is a global data. Like I said, those are the questions I listed down and then I came up with. So global data which says which country go for opt-in organ donation factor, and then which countries goes for opt-out organ donation factor. So it clearly visualizes. And if you see the whole dashboard, I've used the colors consistent, and this is the web format of dashboard. But if you're on mobile, you can just toggle from web to mobile, and then you can see the thinner version of mobile dashboard. Give it a minute. Oops. Let me try rerunning it. Give a minute. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so I have designed a mobile version of this. And the last thing I want to share is, like, I have two top tips to share with you guys. One is, like, when you publish a dashboard in Tableau, you get to have the keep only exclude when you publish. So I would say, like, go ahead and uncheck this include command button so you don't have that include exclude option, because that sometimes confuses the business user. So keep that in mind. And then if you're designing a dashboard without responsive design in mind, don't worry, just make sure you delete the phone layout when you're publishing in Tableau. So what you design on web renders in the mobile as well. So that's one thing I feel like most of the public dashboard that end users are publishing, you guys are, I think, missing to delete this. So it's like looks cluttered in the mobile. It doesn't look proper. So I would say, like, this is one of the great tip which I learned through the journey of working with Tableau. And one of the inspiring posts I thought of sharing is, like, Komal Patel. She has created a top 8 points what you need to know when you're building an insightful dashboard. Just go through it. It has very key factors. Same, like I said, you have to keep your user in mind. You have to make sure what story you are trying to convey, and then what question you are trying to address, key priorities that the end user is expecting. And you have to clean up the data. Cleansing is an important step. And then create wireframes. Think about a story, what you're trying to convey, and do see your data, and also ask business what are their key challenges that they have, which you're trying to address in your dashboard. I felt inspiring at looking at this post, and I thought sharing with you all, which will definitely help you in terms of your dashboard designing career. And some of the blogs that I feel helpful, and I'm learning through these blogs. These are some of the Zen Masters blog. Definitely check it out, and I have my personal blog as well. Go ahead, check it out. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. And these are some of the helpful sites that I thought of sharing when you're working with dashboard, like how to remove background in your image, how to download a free icon, how to download some free images, and how to use Figma tool. There are tool which you can create some beautiful fonts or beautiful images that you are expecting, or gradient effect and all those things. I felt these are some of the useful links to share. And that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer.